Under Nebraska's harvest moon, vast cornfields stretch endlessly toward the horizon, hiding secrets beneath the prairie's deceptive simplicity. September 23, 2019. The corn stood 12 feet tall across the Henderson family farm, stretching toward the horizon under a harvest moon that turned the Nebraska sky silver. In Cottonwood Creek, population 847, this was the most critical time of year. One bad storm, one equipment breakdown, one delay could cost a farmer his entire season. Miguel Santos understood this pressure better than most. At 34, he had spent half his life following the harvest circuit from Texas to North Dakota, supervising crews that moved through America's heartland like clockwork. This September night, he was responsible for 18 workers and 3 massive John Deere combines cutting through Henderson's 800 acres of prime farmland. Miguel had earned Tom Henderson's trust over 4 seasons. Unlike other crew supervisors who focused solely on speed, Miguel balanced productivity with safety. He knew every worker's name, spoke fluent English with the equipment dealers, and had never lost a day to injury or breakdown. His radio crackled constantly with updates from the 3 combine operators, coordinating their movements across the field like an air traffic controller. Equipo dos. Move north 20 rows. Miguel's voice cut through the night air at 2:43 a.m., speaking into his handheld radio. The massive harvester, its headlights cutting through darkness, began its slow pivot toward the new section. 4 minutes later, at exactly 2:47 a.m. according to phone company records, Miguel's radio went silent. Jose Morales, operating combine number 3, noticed it first. "Miguel, you copy?" "Miguel?" Static filled the channel. By 3:15 a.m., when Miguel failed to respond to multiple calls, Jose made the decision to shut down his machine and search for his supervisor. What he found defied explanation. Combine number 1 sat in the middle of the field, engine running, lights blazing, cutting head still engaged. The operator's cab was empty. Miguel Santos had simply vanished from a machine moving 3 miles per hour through an open field with nowhere to hide. The combine's GPS showed it had continued in a straight line for 27 minutes after Miguel's last radio transmission, cutting corn in perfect rows while no one was at the controls. Only the machine's safety system, detecting no operator weight in the seat, had finally shut down the engine. By dawn, word of Miguel's disappearance had spread through Cottonwood Creek's agricultural community. Sheriff's deputies arrived at sunrise to find 18 shaken workers clustered around the abandoned combine, speaking in rapid Spanish and English, trying to explain something that seemed impossible. How do you lose a man in the middle of flat, open farmland? How do you vanish from a moving machine with no place to go? These were the questions that would haunt Windham County for months to come. Sheriff David Martinez had served Windham County for 12 years, but he'd never faced anything like this. By 6:30 a.m. on September 24th, his small department was coordinating the largest search operation in county history. 43 volunteers had responded to the call, including members from both the Anglo farming community and the Latino workers who form the backbone of the county's agricultural workforce. The search grid covered a 5-mile radius from where combine number 1 had been found. Deputy Sarah Kowalski organized teams of 6, each equipped with handheld radios and GPS units. The morning was unusually calm for late September, with temperatures in the low 50s and almost no wind across the prairie. "Miguel knows this area better than anyone," explained Rosa Santos, Miguel's wife, who had driven up from Laredo, Texas, as soon as she received the call. "He's worked these fields for 4 years. He knows every drainage ditch, every fence line. This isn't like him to just disappear." And God, the first significant discovery came at 11:47 a.m. near the irrigation canal that ran along the farm's eastern boundary. Volunteer searcher Tom Bradley found Miguel's work boots, size 10 steel-toed Wolverines, sitting neatly side by side on the canal bank. The boots showed no signs of struggle, no tears or damage. They had simply been removed and placed there, as if Miguel had decided to take them off. That's what bothered me most, Bradley later told investigators. They weren't thrown down or dropped. They were positioned like someone had sat down and carefully taken them off. But there were no footprints in the mud, no impressions in the soft earth around the canal. Even more puzzling were the radio logs from that night. Technical analysis revealed unusual interference patterns, beginning at approximately 2:30 a.m. and lasting until 3:15 a.m. The interference wasn't random static. It showed organized patterns that local radio technician Linda Hayes described as almost like encoded transmissions, but not on any frequency we could identify. You and I've been working radio systems in this county for 25 years, Hayes explained to Sheriff Martinez. I've never seen atmospheric interference create patterns like that. It was like someone was broadcasting on multiple frequencies simultaneously, creating a kind of electronic blanket over our communications. Other farm crews working in the area that night reported similar problems. Equipment at the Mueller farm, 3 miles south, experienced electrical malfunctions around the same time. GPS systems flickered on and off, combined computers rebooted unexpectedly, and radio communications became nearly impossible. By the end of the second day, search teams had covered over 30 square miles of farmland, irrigation ditches, and access roads. They found no trace of Miguel Santos beyond his carefully placed boots. No blood, no clothing, no signs of struggle, no indication of where he might have gone or why he would have left his equipment running in the middle of a critical harvest. The absence of evidence became evidence itself. In Sheriff Martinez's experience, people didn't just vanish from combine harvesters in the middle of flat, open farmland. Someone had to know something. Someone had to have seen something. But as the sun set on September 25th, Miguel Santos remained as mysteriously absent as he had been 36 hours earlier. Linda Hayes had been Cottonwood Creek's radio expert since 1994, when she installed her first ham radio setup in the back room of the Windham County Gazette. As both a licensed radio technician and the newspaper's editor, she approached Miguel Santos' disappearance with technical curiosity and journalistic instincts. What she discovered in the radio recordings would change everything. Working in her cluttered office above Main Street, Hayes spent 3 days analyzing audio recordings from the night Miguel vanished. The sheriff's department had provided her with radio logs from farm operations, county emergency services, and local CB radio traffic. Using specialized software typically reserved for military communications, she began isolating the interference patterns that had disrupted communications across the county. At first, I thought we were dealing with atmospheric skip, Hayes explained in her subsequent report. Sometimes weather conditions can bounce radio signals hundreds of miles, causing interference. But this was different. The patterns were too organized, too deliberate. What Hayes found buried in the static changed her understanding of that night entirely. Between 2:35 and 3:10 a.m., multiple frequencies had carried what appeared to be human voices, speaking words that didn't match any language she recognized. The voices were faint, almost whispered, but they followed conversational patterns with pauses and responses. I sent the recordings to my contact at the University of Nebraska's linguistics department, Hayes said. Professor Catherine Morrison has studied indigenous languages of the Great Plains for 30 years. Her analysis was unsettling. Professor Morrison's report, filed on October 8, 2019, indicated that while the voices didn't match any known Native American language from the region, they showed structural similarities to Pawnee and Ponca dialects that hadn't been spoken fluently in over a century. More disturbing was the technical analysis. The voices appeared to be transmitting from underground. The signal characteristics suggest the source was below ground level, Morrison wrote, possibly in a cave system or artificial underground structure. The earth was filtering the higher frequencies, creating the whispered quality we hear in the recordings. Meanwhile, reports of equipment malfunctions that night continued to surface throughout the county. Jim Mueller, whose farm bordered the Henderson property, had experienced complete GPS failure in 2 of his combines. The screens went crazy around 2:45, Mueller told investigators. Started showing coordinates that didn't exist, numbers that would put us in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. At the Sanderson grain elevator, 5 miles northwest of the Henderson farm, the computerized weighing system had recorded phantom deliveries throughout the early morning hours. The computer showed trucks arriving and depositing corn, but no trucks had actually been there. Security cameras revealed empty loading bays, while the system logged thousands of phantom bushels. It was like the computers were seeing something that wasn't there, explained elevator manager Carol Sanderson. Or maybe they were seeing something we couldn't. The technical anomalies extended beyond radio and GPS systems. The National Weather Service station in North Platte recorded unusual barometric pressure readings between 2:30 and 3:30 a.m. on September 24th. The pressure had dropped suddenly, then spiked, then returned to normal. A pattern meteorologist, Dr. James Chen, described as physically impossible under the atmospheric conditions present that night. Pressure changes like that would require massive air displacement, Chen explained. We're talking about atmospheric disturbances that would be visible on weather radar, would affect wind patterns across hundreds of miles. But our radar showed nothing unusual. Clear skies, calm conditions. Linda Hayes published her preliminary findings in the October 2nd edition of the Windham County Gazette. Under the headline "Technical Mysteries Deepen Santos Case," the article drew attention from across Nebraska and beyond, bringing amateur radio operators, paranormal researchers, and curiosity seekers to Cottonwood Creek. But it also brought something else: silence. Several key witnesses who had initially cooperated with investigators suddenly became reluctant to discuss what they had experienced that night. Equipment operators claimed their memories were fuzzy. Radio logs from some farms were reported accidentally deleted. The technical evidence that Hayes had so carefully documented began disappearing as quickly as Miguel Santos himself had vanished. People were scared, Hayes later reflected, not just of what happened to Miguel, but of what the evidence suggested might be possible. Sometimes the truth is more frightening than the mystery. Beneath Cottonwood Creek's harvest moon, and the mystery of Miguel Santos' disappearance, lay deeper tensions that had been building for years. As Sheriff Martinez's investigation progressed into October 2019, a different picture emerged of the Henderson family farm and the complex relationships between Anglo landowners and Latino agricultural workers. Miguel Santos hadn't just been a crew supervisor, he had been an advocate. Documents recovered from his trailer revealed months of correspondence with the Nebraska Department of Labor regarding working conditions, overtime pay disputes, and safety violations across multiple farms in Windham County. His meticulous records painted a portrait of systematic problems in the county's agricultural labor system. Miguel kept everything, explained his wife Rosa during her interview with deputies. Every payroll discrepancy, every safety incident, every time a worker was threatened or intimidated. He said American farmers needed good workers, but workers needed protection too. The Henderson operation, despite its reputation as one of the county's more progressive farms, had been the subject of several of Miguel's complaints. In July 2019, he had filed a formal report with state labor officials regarding combines being operated beyond safe hours, workers being denied breaks during extreme heat, and housing provided for seasonal workers that violated county health codes. Tom Henderson's response to these allegations revealed the financial pressures facing family farms. In a heated exchange documented in Miguel's notes, Henderson had argued that labor costs were already breaking small operations like his. Every regulation, every safety requirement, every new rule makes it harder to compete with corporate agriculture, Henderson had told Miguel in August. I'm trying to treat people right, but I've got bank payments and equipment loans that don't care about anyone's feelings. The financial reality was stark. Henderson Family Farm carried over $2.80 million in debt, according to county records. Crop insurance would cover losses from weather or natural disasters, but labor disputes or work stoppages could trigger loan defaults. The September harvest represented the make-or-break moment for Henderson's financial survival. Other area farmers faced similar pressures. The Mueller operation had already reduced its workforce by 30% from the previous year. The Kowalski farm had sold 2 sections of land to pay off equipment loans. Across Windham County, small family operations were struggling against corporate agricultural companies that could absorb losses individual farmers couldn't survive. Miguel understood the economics, explained Father Martinez from St. T. Joseph's Catholic Church, where Miguel had attended services when he wasn't traveling. But he also understood that economic pressure doesn't justify putting people at risk or cheating them out of fair wages. He believed good farmers and good workers could find solutions together. Not everyone appreciated Miguel's collaborative approach. Interview notes from the sheriff's investigation revealed conflicting perspectives on Miguel's role in the agricultural community. Some Anglo supervisors viewed him as a troublemaker who complicated simple employment relationships with legal technicalities and regulatory complaints. Miguel was always filing reports, always asking questions, complained Jim Kowalski during his October 15th interview. Some of these workers come up here, make good money for 3 months, then complain about everything. I've been farming for 40 years. We've always taken care of our people. Hey. But Latino workers told different stories. Jose Morales, who had worked with Miguel for 3 seasons, described a system where workers were often cheated on overtime, housed in substandard conditions, and threatened with deportation if they complained about safety violations. Miguel wasn't against the farmers, Morales explained through a translator. He wanted to make the system work for everyone. He said American agriculture needed Latino workers, and Latino workers needed American agriculture, but both sides had to respect each other. The investigation uncovered evidence of increasing tensions throughout the 2019 season. In August, Miguel had confronted Henderson directly about combines being operated with faulty safety systems. The heated argument, witnessed by several workers, had ended with Henderson telling Miguel that if he didn't like the conditions, he could take his crew somewhere else. Miguel told him that wasn't how it worked, recalled worker Carlos Vega. He said they had a contract, a responsibility to each other, and problems should be solved, not ignored. Mr. Henderson didn't like that answer. By September, the relationship between Miguel and farm management had become increasingly strained. Other crew supervisors reported being pressured to distance themselves from Miguel's advocacy efforts. Some Latino workers had been offered bonuses for working directly with Anglo supervisors instead of through Miguel's crew structure. The night Miguel disappeared, he had been scheduled for a meeting the following morning with representatives from the Nebraska Department of Labor regarding his most recent safety complaints. He had told his wife Rosa that he believed he finally had enough documentation to force improvements in working conditions across the county. He was excited, Rosa remembered. He thought he was close to making real changes that would help workers and farmers both. He said the meeting on September 24th would be the beginning of something better. Miguel Santos never made it to that meeting. The question investigators faced was whether someone had ensured he wouldn't. 3 weeks into the investigation, the discovery of Miguel's boots beside the irrigation canal led Sheriff Martinez to consider possibilities he had initially dismissed. On October 14, 2019, county engineers arrived at the Henderson farm to conduct a comprehensive survey of the underground infrastructure that supported modern agricultural operations across Windham County. What they found beneath the Nebraska prairie surprised even local farmers who had worked the land for decades. The irrigation system installed in the 1970s was far more extensive than surface observations suggested. A network of concrete tunnels, some large enough for a person to walk through upright, connected water pumping stations across multiple farm properties. "We're looking at an underground highway system," explained County Engineer Patricia Wong during her briefing to investigators. These tunnels were designed for maintenance access to irrigation equipment, but they extend for miles in every direction. Someone could travel underground from the Henderson farm to the county line without ever coming to the surface. And even the tunnel system took advantage of Windham County's unique geology. Beneath the topsoil lay a limestone aquifer system that had been shaped by underground water flow over thousands of years. When irrigation infrastructure was installed, engineers had followed natural cave formations, expanding and reinforcing them to create maintenance corridors. Local farmer Tom Henderson admitted he had never explored the full extent of the tunnel system beneath his property. "My father had them put in back in '74, Henderson explained. "We used the main access points for pump maintenance, but I couldn't tell you where all the passages lead. Hell, I didn't even know half of them existed until you people started mapping them." The mapping process revealed something even more intriguing. The irrigation tunnels connected to older underground structures that predated modern farming operations. County historical records indicated that during the 1960s, the federal government had constructed underground grain storage facilities as part of agricultural surplus management programs. These facilities, built to withstand natural disasters and potentially nuclear attack, had been abandoned when storage policies changed in the 1970s. "We're talking about Cold War-era construction," explained local historian Margaret Chen during her interview with investigators. These weren't just storage silos. They were designed as complete underground agricultural complexes, with their own power systems, ventilation, and communication equipment. On October 18th, search teams equipped with professional spelunking gear entered the tunnel system through an access point near where Miguel's boots had been discovered. Led by State Police investigator Captain James Rodriguez, the team spent 12 hours exploring underground passages that extended far beyond what county records indicated. What they found was evidence of recent human activity. Fresh footprints in mud that should have been undisturbed for years. Modern equipment including battery-powered lights, portable radios, and what appeared to be temporary sleeping areas. Someone had been using the tunnel system regularly and recently. The footprints were size 10, Captain Rodriguez noted in his report, consistent with Miguel Santos' boot size. But there were other prints too, different sizes, different tread patterns. This wasn't just Miguel down there. Multiple people had been using these tunnels. And the investigation team also discovered that the abandoned grain storage facilities were not as abandoned as county records suggested. Electrical systems showed signs of recent repair and maintenance. Ventilation systems were operational, drawing power from an unknown source. Communication equipment included modern radio transmitters capable of the multi-frequency broadcasts that Linda Hayes had detected on the night Miguel disappeared. "Someone has been maintaining these facilities," Rodriguez concluded. "We're looking at a complete underground operation that's been hidden from county oversight for years, possibly decades." Even more disturbing was evidence that the underground complex had been accessed on the night of Miguel's disappearance. Security cameras that investigators hadn't known existed showed movement in the tunnels between 2:30 and 4 a.m. on September 24th. The images were grainy and inconclusive, but they clearly showed human figures moving through passages beneath the Henderson farm. Laboratory analysis of soil samples from the tunnels revealed traces of recent agricultural activity. Corn pollen, diesel fuel, and hydraulic fluid, all consistent with harvest operations, had been tracked into underground areas that should have been sealed off from surface farming activities. The evidence suggests that harvest operations and underground activities weren't separate, explained forensic analyst Dr. Sarah Kim. Someone was using the tunnel system as part of ongoing agricultural work. This wasn't just people hiding underground. This was an integrated operation involving both surface farming and underground facilities. The discovery of the tunnel system opened new possibilities for Miguel's disappearance, but it also raised more questions than it answered. How long had people been operating underground in Windham County? Who had access to facilities that supposedly didn't exist? And what kind of agricultural operation required both surface farming and hidden underground infrastructure? As investigators prepared to expand their underground search, They realized they were no longer just looking for a missing person. They were uncovering evidence of activities that someone had gone to great lengths to keep secret. Activities that might explain why Miguel Santos had vanished without a trace on a harvest moon night in September. November brought the first hard freeze to Windham County, and with it, revelations that would reshape the investigation into Miguel Santos' disappearance. As combine harvesters sat silent in equipment yards and corn prices were tallied at grain elevators, the financial and legal pressures that had been building beneath the surface of Cottonwood Creek's agricultural community finally broke into the open. The first crack in the community's silence came from an unexpected source. Maria Santos, Miguel's 17-year-old daughter, arrived from Texas on November 3rd, carrying a box of letters and documents her father had mailed to her throughout the 2019 harvest season. Unlike the official records investigators had already reviewed, these personal communications revealed Miguel's growing fears about what he was uncovering in Windham County. "Papa was scared," Maria told Sheriff Martinez through tears. "Not of hard work or difficult people, but of something bigger. He wrote that some farmers were involved in things that weren't just about growing corn. He said money was moving through the agricultural system that didn't match what crops could earn." Miguel's letters described discovering financial irregularities during his work as crew supervisor. Harvest loads were being recorded differently at different grain elevators. Some farms were reporting yields that didn't match field observations. Workers were being paid from accounts that didn't correspond to any farm operation Maria could identify. "He thought someone was using harvest operations to hide other kinds of business," Maria explained. "Papa wrote that trucks were moving grain at night to places that weren't on any official routes. He said the underground tunnels weren't just for irrigation, they were for storage, for hiding things." The financial investigation that followed Maria's revelations painted a complex picture of economic desperation and creative solutions. Tom Henderson's farm was indeed on the verge of bankruptcy, but so were most agricultural operations in the county. What made some farms survive while others failed had less to do with crop yields than with supplemental income streams that didn't appear on any tax returns. State agricultural investigators, working with the Nebraska Department of Revenue, uncovered evidence of systematic underreporting of harvest yields, combined with mysterious cash payments that kept struggling farms operational. The underground storage facilities weren't storing grain surpluses. They were facilitating off-the-books agricultural transactions that allowed family farms to compete with corporate operations. "We're looking at an informal agricultural cooperative that's been operating outside normal banking and regulatory systems for years," explained State Agricultural Inspector David Wong. "Individual farmers couldn't survive the economic pressures, but collectively, using shared underground resources, they found ways to remain profitable. The system was ingenious and probably illegal. Grain harvested by struggling farms was stored underground, then sold through more successful operations that could command better prices. Workers were paid from pooled resources that spread labor costs across multiple properties. Equipment and fuel purchases were coordinated to take advantage of bulk pricing that individual farms couldn't access." Miguel wasn't just discovering labor violations, realized Captain Rodriguez. He was documenting evidence of large-scale agricultural fraud, tax evasion, false reporting to government programs, possibly violation of federal agricultural subsidy regulations. Not self-financed. The insurance implications alone were staggering. If Tom Henderson's operation was declared a workplace accident, insurance payments would keep the farm operational. But if Miguel's disappearance was determined to be related to his role as an informant or whistleblower, the insurance investigation could expose the entire underground cooperative and destroy a dozen family farms. Everyone had something to lose if Miguel talked, Sheriff Martinez concluded. Not just individual farmers, but the entire informal system that was keeping rural Windham County economically viable. Interviews with Latino workers revealed additional layers of complexity. Many seasonal workers knew about the underground operations and had been quietly participating for years. The extra storage and off-season work opportunities provided by the hidden facilities allowed some workers to remain in the area year-round instead of constantly traveling the harvest circuit. Miguel wanted to make everything legal, everything official, explained Jose Morales. But some of us were afraid that following all the rules would destroy the opportunities that had kept our families fed for years. We weren't just losing a supervisor. We were losing someone who could have ended the only system that worked for everyone. By late November, investigators had identified at least 4 parties with substantial motives for wanting Miguel Santos to disappear. Tom Henderson, facing bankruptcy and potential criminal charges. Other farmers in the underground cooperative, who could lose everything if exposed. Workers who benefited from the informal system and feared deportation if investigations revealed their illegal status, and potentially federal agricultural inspectors who might have been complicit in ignoring obvious signs of fraud. The problem with having multiple suspects with strong motives, Captain Rodriguez noted in his final report, is that it becomes impossible to determine who actually acted on those motives, or whether Miguel's disappearance was the result of coordinated action by multiple parties. Miguel's journal, recovered from his trailer in December, contained his final entry dated September 23, 2019. It read, "Tomorrow I meet with state officials. After 4 years of documenting problems, I finally have enough evidence to force real changes. This system can work legally if people are willing to be honest about what they're doing. But change is hard, and some people would rather hide than fix things. I pray I can help farmers and workers find a better way forward." Miguel Santos had been trying to save a system that others were determined to keep secret. Whether he disappeared because he threatened that system, or because he became too dangerous to those who benefited from it, remained an open question as winter settled over the Nebraska plains. September 24th, 2020. Exactly 1 year after Miguel Santos vanished from a combine harvester in the middle of a Nebraska cornfield, Linda Hayes returned to the Henderson farm carrying updated radio monitoring equipment and questions that still had no answers. The official investigation had been suspended in March 2020, not closed but set aside pending new evidence. Sheriff Martinez had been re-elected despite community criticism of the unresolved case, largely because voters understood the complexity of what investigators had uncovered. Miguel's disappearance had revealed an entire hidden economy, but proving criminal conspiracy was different from understanding motivation. Tom Henderson had managed to avoid bankruptcy through insurance settlements and a federal agricultural disaster loan program. His farm was still operating, though with a new crew supervisor and significantly increased oversight from state labor officials. The underground tunnel system had been officially sealed, though county engineers admitted they probably hadn't found all the access points. "What bothers me most is how normal everything looks now," Hayes explained as she walked through the fields where Miguel had disappeared. "Same corn, same harvest equipment, same workers. Like nothing ever happened. But something did happen here, and somebody knows what it was." Hayes had continued her investigation throughout the year, driven by journalistic curiosity and a growing certainty that the technical anomalies from September 24, 2019, had not been coincidental. Her ham radio monitoring setup had been recording electromagnetic activity across Windham County for 12 months, looking for patterns that might explain the interference that had coincided with Miguel's disappearance. On the anniversary night, her equipment detected them again. Starting at 2:31 a.m., radio frequencies across the county began showing the same organized interference patterns that had appeared during Miguel's disappearance. Multiple frequency transmissions with characteristics suggesting underground origin. Voices speaking in whispered tones that linguistic analysis still couldn't identify. Electronic signatures that indicated sophisticated communication equipment operating from hidden locations. "I called Sheriff Martinez immediately," Hayes recalled. "We had patrol units positioned throughout the county within 15 minutes. If someone was going to repeat whatever happened to Miguel, we were going to be ready this time." No. But the patrol units found nothing. No unusual vehicle activity. No people where they shouldn't be. No signs of underground access or suspicious behavior. The radio interference continued for 43 minutes, then stopped as suddenly as it had begun, leaving no trace except the recordings Hayes had made. The next morning brought an unexpected development. Carlos Vega, one of the Latino workers who had been present during Miguel's disappearance, approached Hayes at the Windham County Gazette office with information he had been afraid to share for a year. "I saw lights in the irrigation canal the night Miguel disappeared," Vega told Hayes through a translator. "Not flashlights or vehicle lights, but something coming from underground, like electricity moving through the water. I was afraid to tell anyone because I didn't think they would believe me, and I was afraid of what it might mean. If me can, Muddy, or behind me." Vega's description matched reports Hayes had been collecting from other sources throughout the year. Strange lights seen in irrigation ditches during harvest seasons going back at least 5 years. Equipment malfunctions that coincided with unusual radio interference. Workers who had heard voices speaking unfamiliar languages during night shifts, always attributed to atmospheric conditions or imagination. "There's a pattern here that goes back further than Miguel's case," Hayes concluded. "Something has been happening in Windham County for years, something that people have been trained to ignore or explain away. Miguel's disappearance wasn't an isolated incident. It was just the first time someone couldn't ignore what was happening." The second anniversary passed without major developments, but Hayes continues to monitor radio frequencies and collect testimony from agricultural workers who remain reluctant to speak publicly. The underground tunnel system, officially sealed, shows signs of continued access according to her sources. The informal agricultural cooperative that investigators uncovered has evolved but not disappeared, operating with more caution but continuing to provide economic support for family farms facing impossible financial pressures. Miguel Santos' case remains open in the Windham County Sheriff's files. Rosa Santos has moved back to Texas but maintains contact with local investigators, hoping for resolution that may never come. Maria Santos, now in college, plans to study agricultural economics and labor law, inspired by her father's advocacy work, and determined to continue his efforts to create systems that work fairly for both farmers and workers. "My father believed that honest people could solve problems together," Marie explained during a phone interview on the 3rd anniversary of his disappearance. "He disappeared because he was getting close to proving that. Someone didn't want those problems solved honestly." As harvest season approaches each year in Windham County, Linda Hayes prepares her radio monitoring equipment and watches for signs that whatever took Miguel Santos might be stirring again beneath the Nebraska prairie. The corn grows tall, the combines roll through endless fields, and the questions that began on a harvest moon night in September 2019 remain unanswered. Somewhere in the vast agricultural landscape of America's heartland, the truth about Miguel Santos waits to be discovered. Until then, his disappearance stands as a reminder that even in the most open, familiar places, some mysteries run deeper than anyone imagines.